And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess, back with another AFL round review. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, round 20 has come, it has gone, and boy, was it an interesting one for so many reasons. Oh my gosh, what a weekend of football. And joining me, I don't know if she's happy. But the one thing I love is I love talking to this wonderful footy loving lady. We have Marnie Cohen of Kanga TV hopping on the podcast. Marnie, it is so good to see you again.
Donnie, thank you so much for having me back. I always love catching up and having a good chat. I don't do too much AFL talk outside of North Melbourne, so it's always nice to do that with you. And yeah, an interesting round to say the least. I don't think I am happy, but definitely have cooled off since Saturday night. I can confirm for sure.
Well, sometimes it just takes a little few days to get it off your chest. And I know I saw your very impassionate discussion of the weekend, and again, as I stated on social media, I love your passion. I think your passion for North Melbourne is incredibly honoring and incredibly inspiring to a lot of people because maybe it's just I see so many people up here in the States that as soon as their team starts going to crap, they put bags over their heads and they don't want to admit that they're a fan of a certain team. So I respect and honor your dedication to the North Melbourne Football Club. And before we get to the podcast, a huge congratulations. If you are a North Melbourne fan, this young lady pulled a fantastic guest on her show. The man, the myth, the legend that is David King appeared on Kanga TV. I plan on watching this episode later on today. How cool was this, Marty? Real quick before we hop into this week's of footy, as you were kind of telling me off mic, this thing came together quickly, but how awesome was it to have a North Melbourne legend on the show?
Yeah, it was amazing. And I've had so many amazing guests on the channel in the short time that I've, been doing it for. And every day, like there's a new surprise around the corner. Kingy is obviously so vocal about North in the media, and I think for a lot of North fans, we kind of look at Kingy as someone who can get us answers and kind of be a bit of a voice of reason for us. And I think a lot of North fans, and something I've struggled with over the past few weeks, with our performances just being really uninspiring. It's not necessarily about the scoreline or the result, but it's just kind of what we're seeing out there just kind of doesn't really look to be too motivated of a group at the moment. And so I think for me, I just want some answers. And I know that I'm not getting them from the club at the moment, and I understand why they're keeping us at arm's length a little bit as fans. But for Kingy, he obviously is entrenched in the day-to-day AFL world. So I think for a lot of North fans, and I definitely resonated with a lot of the comments that he said in sort of the 24 hours following the loss. So I just shot him a message on Monday morning and said I'd love to, you know, have a yarn and just have a bit of a chat over all the sort of things that have unfolded, not just over the past, round of footy, but for North so far this season, and maybe a little bit of hope for the 4 games that are left. And he was so happy to help out. And I think that speaks volumes of, and I know we all think that our football club and the community of our club is so special and unique, but when times are as tough as they are for North fans, for him to give up an hour of his day on a Monday to have a chat with me for the channel. I know it meant a lot to North fans. It meant everything to me. Yeah, I think it just speaks volumes of the North Melbourne community as a whole. And I was really honoured to be able to have a chat with him and bring that to North fans and footy fans in general.
Fantastic. Like I said, cannot wait. I'm going to sit down and watch that later on this afternoon as I work up here, but cannot wait. So let's hop into it. This may not be the most scintillating round of footy to go through, so we may go through some of these games a little bit quicker than some, but the good thing is that quite the scintillating end that we will talk about. Let's jump right into it, Marnie. Thoughts on this round? Because I think the operative word for the round was blowout.
Yeah, it was a pretty flat round of footy, unfortunately. And full disclaimer, I only really focus on North Melbourne. I do see dribs and drabs of the other games throughout the weekend, but the North stuff is really where my heart's at. And so, with that in mind, to watch or consume any football outside of my own side this weekend was a bit of a challenge, with the exception of the final game of the round, which ended up being one of the
Mhm.
games of the season, if not the game of the season so far. So we're very spoiled there. I will say, though, despite the games themselves being quite bland, there were a lot of really interesting storylines, I think,
Mhm.
that came out of this weekend. From each, just about every game. So it'll be interesting to deep dive some of the narratives surrounding a few of those games, I think, as well.
Yeah, definitely. Let's start off with probably one of the more heartfelt ones. We'll jump Thursday night footy as Hawthorn defeat the Carlton Blues 85-61. And as sad as it is to not see the man go out, Sam Doherty, legend. Congratulations on a wonderful career. And I have to say this, the bow after the goal that he kicked, chef's kiss, fantastic. We're gonna miss you, Doc. It's been so much fun to watch his journey. It's been devastating to see all the things that he's gone to have to go through with the knee injuries and the cancer that he's had to fight. But he's just been a club man, a Carlton club man through and through. I know the Blues Nation absolutely love him. You'd love to see him go out with a win, but Hawthorn just the littlest bit too good. But Doc, again, class personified. Again, we're gonna miss you, Doc. We're really gonna miss you.
I really love Doc, and his story is phenomenal. And it's, the struggles that he's faced with his health, particularly off field, has been well documented. And I think that he's been extremely generous in sharing and being really vulnerable at every stage of his recovery, be it from the cancer, be it from the knee injury last year, all that sort of thing. Of the bow was beautiful, and it was, really poetic the way he was able to bow out and to have Kate Simpson join Cripper in cheering him off. I thought was just a
Mhm.
beautiful touch. Um, you would have thought that that would have inspired the Blues along with Wiedering's 200th, and he announced to the club pre-game in his address, he and his partner are expecting a child. So there was just so much emotion surrounding, and Harry Mackay returns. Like there was a lot of emotion. But I think for Carlton, I just see an empty football club at the moment,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And if all of those things couldn't be enough to light a bit of a fire in them, I think with Carlton, it's kind of been a very similar story for majority of the year. They go missing for a big portion of a game.
Mhm.
At the start of the year, we saw that they would start games off really strong and then they would just fall off a cliff after halftime, and sides were just able to work their way back into the game and take the 4 points. In the latter part of the year, it's been the opposite. They've been so slow out of the gate, and the game's been done and dusted before they actually fire up. And that's what happened against us in round 15. We, got out to what was it, like an 8 goal lead at three-quarter time, and only then did they switch on. The game was already over, and Hawthorn, to be honest, didn't look that impressive either after quarter time, really. Once they sort of their dominant period was over, and Carlton sort of evened the game up. The Hawthorn didn't look too flash. So to still get the job done by 5 goals, I think is kudos to them. So yeah, that's sort of where I see Carlton. I think they're just sort of ready for the season to be over. I think there'll be a lot of change at Carlton over the off season. But yeah, I mean, it's just sort of one of those things, unfortunately. Um, Sometimes the tank's just empty, and not even the greatest of storyline can get you over.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like Hawthorne, they kind of put it in they kind of put it in neutral after the first quarter. They kind of jumped out to a nice little lead and then just kind of held on to it. The interesting thing will be is that Mario Chola is still to come back in. What's the selection issue with Mitch Lewis and Cal Shadir will be the questions. James Sicily seems to be back to James Sicily kicking best. It'll be interesting to see how that progresses. Will Day has been back, which I think for this was kind of a great little softening first game to get him through to see how things go on that. So it, it'll be interesting to watch this Hawks team. I'm 100% with you. I will not be surprised if this list at Carlton takes a few hits and moves some people out in free agency. Whether they get anything back or not will be the $1 million question. Do we see one of the big forwards of Curnow or Harry Mackay find their way out of um, out of Blues Nation? We'll have to see. I'm fascinated to see how it goes. Will people like Sod and Akers and some of these guys that have been brought in that unfortunately they haven't really been what I think they were expecting? Will they be moved? There's a lot of question marks at Blues Nation. We'll have to see how it goes. I'm fascinated to see their off season because now the Docs walked off into the sunset. I think the rest of this year is kind of get through it, and then we'll have to see how the trade and free agency session goes. We were then treated to Friday night footy, which I know has been the bane of a lot of at least the media chat is that we get Essendon and they're trying, okay, they're trying, but when you play a doggies team that just absolutely goes bunta and kicks 143 points in a 93-point win, 143 to 50, combined the crazy Darcy and Aaron Naughton combined for 13 goals just themselves. Those two beat Essendon just themselves. Friday night footy, man, I will say this. The media people have to be absolutely livid because right now, Cyclone Alfred has really screwed a lot of things up for the AFL this year.
It's so interesting. I think going into round 20, we were all complaining about the doubleheader on Friday night. And I think by the end of the round, we were all happy that it happened because at least there was a second game to save our Friday night. Unfortunately for Essendon, it was a repeat of the first encounter with the Bulldogs not too long ago. Um, it's virtually impossible for them right now to field a quality side with the amount of injuries that they've got. Um, and that's just the sad reality of it. And to be honest with you, even earlier in the season when they did have just about they've never had a relatively healthy list this year. They
Hmm.
haven't really
I agree.
had an opportunity to play their close to their best 23, right? But they've definitely had periods where they've had a really good selection of players in that side and they have looked good, but they haven't set the world on fire. I feel like they just fail to take that last step always. I don't know if it's a mental thing. I know at North, there's definitely a mental issue for sure when it comes to like taking that last step to claim the 4 points and actually capitalize on good patches of game. The Dogs, on the other hand, I mean, they're sitting outside of the eight at the moment. I think they're way too inconsistent. Their best is some of the best footy in the competition, and their worst is just like a bit meh. Norton and Darcy were fantastic over the weekend, and they're very, very, very hard to stop. Darcy's going to be one of the best players in the competition if he's not already in the next 1 to 2 seasons, no doubt.
Mhm.
If those guys can fire the way that they have a couple more times before the end of the season, then I feel like they'll probably snag a spot in the eight, but it's just whether they do any damage. Because we saw last year, like they ended the season really, really hot, and then they were out in the first round when they lost to Hawthorn. So, look, I think with the Dogs, it's really hard to get a read on them. I think my response to them on a week to week basis is really erratic, and it's probably
Mhm.
one of I think a lot of sides this season in particular, and so why the competition's so even. A lot of sides' best and worst is quite far apart, I think, but they're notorious for it, the Dogs. Um, but you know what? Bont's back now, and you've got Darcy and Norton firing, and you've got Libra and you've got Richards, and there's plenty of talent in there. They should be able to, make a really strong charge for finals at the end of the year.
Yeah, the question will be is how long Lib is out. I know he left the game second quarter. Hopefully it's a quick injury. I haven't had a chance to check the injury list to see what the prognosis is on that. You still have Chalor to come back into this group, so they're still not even 100%. Again, we aren't going to see Cody Waitman at all this year. So, but this doggies, I agree that they're just Jekyll and Hyde enough. They're one of those. They beat the teams they're supposed to beat, which is better than some teams this year that have seemed to have their stumbling blocks against some of the bottom eight sides. But the doggies' problem is that they can't beat top level sides. I think they have one win against top eight sides this year. So that's their biggest issue right now is that they're beating the sides they're supposed to. but they're not pulling off upsets when they need to or beating teams that are above them. So I'll be fascinated to see. They've got a couple of toughies, a couple of teams around them in the ladder. They have to get it done. If they don't, they may be sitting at home come September, which is interesting when you see results like this where they really put up and they show how good they really can be. But there's still a possibility, unfortunately, they may not play finals. We'll have to see how that goes. The other side of the Friday night, as Marnie so eloquently said, was is that we did have two games on Friday night. This is a game. This is hard. Just kidding.
Here we go.
No,
Go on.
it's very very simple. It was a tale of two halves. Really, it really was, and not just for Sydney, but also for GWS too. Because in the first half, Sydney looked like nothing could go wrong. They were hitting targets, kicking goals, great pressure, tackle pressure was fantastic. GWS was stifled the entire time, could not get anything going. And then halftime, Adam Kingsley in his Hulk arms somehow, some way, gave a mighty spray to his Giants. And in the second half, the Giants went, screw this. And they absolutely tsunamied the living crap out of the Swans as they get a win. Giants get a win by 44, 102-58. As a Swans fan, this was so disheartening for me because the first half I was up and about. They looked good, up 35 at the halftime break, but everything that could not have happened happened. They lost Hayden McLean in the first 2 minutes of the game to a concussion. Then to start the early in the third quarter, Joel Hamling goes down with a hamstring injury, which then leaves the Swans undermanned in the back, which then Nick Blakey's gonna have to try to guard Aaron Cadman. Never a good combination for anybody. And unfortunately, none of the other forwards that the Swans had could go back and play defense effectively as a Joel Hamling. It was a recipe for disaster. And Finn Callahan went, you know what? This is my game. And he absolutely tore the Swans to shreds. One of the few times James Jordan has not been able to lock a guy down for an entire game this year. As sucky as it was as a Swans fan, it was inspiring to watch this Giants team. I mean, Jake Stringer actually having a good game. Now, the question will be is will the next four games he not play well because he can't play two games well in a row. Toby Green, unfortunately, does see himself get suspended, and I know there's new vision coming out of a donkey kick to Rampy, so we'll have to see if more comes of that. Unfortunately, again, Toby Green. Will somebody please send this message to Toby? Hey, Toby, pull your bloody head in, dude. You're too good a player to do some of the stupid shit that you do. Trust me, okay? I I respect Toby as a player. His antics annoy the crap out of me because they're just unnecessary, okay? They're just unnecessary. You're too good a player to do some of that stupid shit that you do, okay? Finn Callahan is fantastic. Lockie Whitfield and Lockie Ash absolutely had field days off the halfback line. I can't really say much else. The Swans were crap in the second half. They couldn't get anything going. Brody Grundy was one of the few bright lights of the entire game. Again, he continuing to prove why he's been one of the best rucks in the competition since around 8 or 9 when he finally started playing really well. A tough one for me. Swans are done. Unfortunately, it means my finals will be a little less stressful because I don't have to wake up and worry whether the Swans will win or not. So, but it will make the finals fun because I can fully go into it, watch it, and just enjoy the finals, enjoy the footy. This was a tough one for me, Marnie, because again, unfortunately, finals are dashed, but again, the Giants just so good.
I think it's quite miraculous that only at this point, at the end of round 20, the Swans slim finals chances dashed. They had a really rocky start to the year, and unfortunately, injuries are probably the reason they had a slow start. And it seems to be the reason in this game why, or a big reason in this game as to why they sort of fell off in the second half. They were well held by the Giants. They only kicked 3 goals, the Swans, after halftime. So, a really impressive performance by the Giants. And I know that the Swans came out hot and they really threw everything they had at the Giants in the first half. But I wouldn't underestimate the Giants heading into this final series. I
Mm-mm.
still think they're very dangerous. I know a lot of people don't like their approach, both on and off the field. I think some people can see it as arrogant or as cocky, but I actually really like it. I think that having fun in footy is a real key to success these days. I think there's got to be a good energy about the group, amongst the group, and you can tell this group is extremely tight. You can tell they all back each other in. 100% of the time. And I think it's quite hard to deny the attractiveness of the Giants as a brand to the general footy fan. Like, I personally am not really someone that consumes a lot of football outside of North Melbourne other than casually watching another game or watching a show or listening to a podcast. But I think the Giants are brilliant. I think what they do, their way to make themselves quote unquote relevant. Um, the only time you don't like the Giants is when you play them, I think.
Mhm.
I think their best footy is still some of the best in this competition. And while I obviously can't ignore the first half of this game, I do think they will be quite a threat come September because I think they've had enough finals experience now that they know how to rise to the occasion when it's required.
Yep, yep, 100%. They're them and another team that we'll talk about here in the Saturday slate are two teams that I have my eye on. In fact, a very good friend of ours, I think, is going to chuckle and giggle with happiness as she hears this response. And I know Marnie knows exactly who I'm talking about. So we'll go on to Saturday. The Saturday slate was rivalry that honestly, like, I mean, this is where blowout really comes through. And we'll go through each game really quickly. We'll start off. This is probably the shocker of all shockers. Because if you would have told me going into this weekend that there would have been a blowout in the Q Clash, I would have told you it was possible, but not the way it went. As Gold Coast put the smacketh down on the Brisbane Lions 130 to 64. I did not see this coming, Marty. This is a Brisbane Lions team. They're defending premiers. They have so much talent on this team. I did not see the Gold Coast Suns bending them over their knee and spanking them like a misbehaving child.
No, I didn't either, to be honest. I think that it's more about the Suns than it is about the Lions this game. Their stars really fired, especially in the absence of Tuke Miller, Rowell and Anderson. I mean, they are one of the best midfield, duos in the competition at the moment.
Mhm.
Just red hot. I think Alex Davey, he was great. And, it's interesting there's rumors that he'll be exploring his options outside of the Suns come season's end, and he's putting together a really great audition tape for
Mhm.
potential suitors who might be lining up. Jared Witts just continues to be a real, just the ever reliable, and I think he's actually been quite underrated over the past few seasons
I would
in
agree.
his role at the Suns. So look, I think it's more of a encouragement an encouraging, I should say, result for the Suns as it is a worry for the Lions. I think while these big losses are never good to have at any point of the season, I think it's inevitable when you are trying for so long to just kind of stay up and about. Having said that, I will say that I feel like the Lions have been cruising for a lot of this season. I feel like
Mhm.
we haven't seen them hit that sort of second level for a lot of season 2025 at the moment, but they're still in the top four. So I think that sort of says a lot about them and where they're at. If they can just dig a little bit deeper in the next 4 weeks and then push themselves towards finals, then I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, they're almost like I kind of almost sit here as looking at Brisbane Lion going, they're almost like that long distance runner. They started off okay. They kind of had some glitches. They're kind of in that middle part of the marathon where they're kind of still in jog mode. They're saving energy for the end. I worry that if they decide to go, we're Brisbane, damn it, who knows what could happen with this Brisbane Lions team. My only worry is that they're risking losing that home field advantage in the qualifying final, which playing up at the GABA, which has been a fortress for them, a little bit not so much over the last couple of years. That's a worry for me, especially when you've got teams like Collingwood where you have to play at the cauldron that is the MCG. You still have Adelaide rolling around there, and then our next one, Fremantle, as the Western Derby goes, hold my beer, we want to do it too, as the Fremantle Dockers smash the West Coast Eagles 126-77, a 49-point win by the Dockers. The Dockers are a sleeping giant, in my opinion, because Perth trip is never easy for any team. And if the Dockers can put themselves to where they have a home field advantage in any of the in either of the qualifying finals, look out. I don't think so. I think they're probably going to be in an elimination final, but still, playing Perth, playing out in Perth, never an easy task. Dockers get it done.
I absolutely love what the Dockers have put together in the second half of the season. Don't love what they did against North. We definitely should have beaten them when we played them. One of
Mhm.
many games we should have won this season. But I do agree with you. I think that the talent coming out of Fremantle and sort of the budding stars they've sort of unearthed this season. I think Murphy Reed's been, and we don't get a lot of it over in Victoria. That is just the reality of it. Unless a player is linked to returning home to Victoria, you don't really get a lot of it over here. So Murphy Reed, though, he's a star. I mean, Sarong, Brayshaw, like we know these guys are phenomenal. Luke Jackson's put together another, unbelievable second half of the season, and what he's able to do and the way he can cover the ground is just insane. Patrick Voss has had an unreal few weeks. Like it's all working. It's just all kind of clicking for Fremantle. I think we've expected this probably last season from them too, and we just didn't see it. And like Brisbane, they've sort of taken a while to kind of get themselves going this season. And now they're going and they look like they're unstoppable. And I agree with you. I actually think they've got potential to go like deep in this final series.
Agree.
Whether or not they have the legs to go the full length of the ground and make the grand final, I'm not sure. But their win last week against Collingwood was impressive. They've won nine of their last 10, I think it is now.
Something to
And
that
they've
effect, yeah.
claimed a couple of very big scalps. One thing I will say about Fremantle as well, they travel very well. And in recent years, they have been able to travel very well. So I think they're definitely, I agree with you, definitely the sleeping giant of the final series to come.
Yeah, last week's win over Collingwood was a shocker to some people, but it really wasn't to me. I surprisingly the Luke Jackson Sean Darcy combination has really started to click. And when you already have two really fantastic midfielders in Brayshaw and Sarong already there, you've got Tracy, you've got Voss, you've got Reed, you've got the Jaya Miss up forward. You've got a forward line that is dangerous. Then you add Michael Frederick with his speed and ability. Sam Swatowski is playing some really good football, and their defense is always staunch. And there's still Alex Pierce to come back into this lineup for this Fremantle team. This is another smoky team that I think is probably going to, like I said, going to be in that elimination final. They're going to be a danger to whoever falls out from the qualifying finals because they're going to be tough. And the fact that they win that game at the MCG shows they don't need to just be in Perth to get wins. This is a scary side. I'm fascinated to watch this Docker side because they have me very, very intrigued. So I didn't want to move to this game, especially for my co-host here, but I will really quickly. I'll let you go off, Marnie. Cats get a win over your beloved North Melbourne Kangaroos by 150 to 49. I will let you have your soapbox. I know that you took some time on Kanga TV to give your honest thoughts. I won't make you rehash everything. Just, I know this is a good Cats team. Okay, I really do. But this has got to be frustrating because again, there's questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, totally. It was a complete capitulation. And to be honest, Geelong should have beaten us by more. They missed so many shots in front of goal in the first quarter. And then in the last quarter, they probably took the foot off the accelerator as well. So it was really disappointing. Jeremy Cameron was just phenomenal. And 11 goals. I mean, it's as good a performance from a key forward as I've seen for a very, very long time. Bailey Smith just did as he pleased. Max Holmes, like they ran rings around us. And you're right, the separation between the two sides is night and day. There's a reason why they're in the top four and a reason why we're in the bottom four. And it was on show on the weekend. Just really disappointing. We haven't played Geelong in Melbourne since 2019. We haven't beaten them since 2015. So I would have liked us to come in with a little bit more gusto and a little bit more fight. But they just proved way too good for us. We had patches where we challenged them a little bit, but our issue all season has been A, turnover, and B, inability to capitalize on the scoreboard in moments and periods of dominance. And that was no different on Saturday night, obviously. Um, Look, there were a couple of good things to take away from the game still. I think we're kind of at this point, and I don't want to compensate for losses with positive signs because that just builds a losing culture and you shouldn't really accept anything but wins. But in a scenario like this, I think you have to keep yourself sane, despite the very, very limited supply that our forward line did get. They were very good, and our forward line has been functioning very, very well across the season. Zerha, Paul Curtis, and Jack Darling all chipped in. So they were awesome. Cam Zerha in particular has had an unbelievable season, flown completely under the radar. I think has been awesome. Charlie Comben started the game forward, went back halfway through the third, and he was just unstoppable. 8 intercept possessions in a quarter and a half of footy. It was the most of anyone in our defence. So awesome effort by Chom, but doesn't really say too much about our defense. But unfortunately, it's not just them. Obviously, they have to hold a little bit of responsibility for their inability to defend when we
Mhm.
need them to. But we lack defensive pressure across the board. And the ball comes out so easily from our midfield. Either we can't defend in the midfield or we win the clearance, then we turn the ball over and then it's going back the other way quicker than, lightning. So there's a heap of issues. I think we just look, we've got 4 games left and 2 of them are definitely winnable. So I would say that I hope we come out this week against St Kilda and respond. And the one thing about North is we actually always do respond. It's just whether that response is going to be enough to get us the 4 points or not. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah. So, and just real quickly before we move on, and I kind of previewed this a little bit to Marty pre-mic. So, I tend to listen to Triple M. I tend to listen to the Sunday Footy Show, and Damian Barrett, who is a Bruce supporter, but is a very often critic of the club because of, unfortunately, the results, had a very scathing review. And I'm fascinated to hear your thoughts on this, Marty. Is, in his opinion, Clarko's a little overrated. He basically, to roughly state it, again, I'm not going to specifically say it, is that Clarko benefited from the great list that he had because of all the great football minds at Hawthorn with Hodge and with Buddy and with Roughhead and with all of the superstars that he had. And then maybe this North list is exposing him as not, maybe not the greatest coach we've ever seen, but maybe just a lucky beneficiary of a really good, well put together list. Your thoughts on that?
I just don't think you can have one without the other, to be honest. Like, I don't think you can have a premiership potential list without a premiership potential coach and vice versa. So I look at a list like Carlton, for example, and there's stars at every line. You know, they've got Wiedering down back. They've had in the midfield, they've got Cripps, they've got Walsh, they've got Chera. Up forward, they've got Kerno, and they've got Harry Mackay, TDK in the ruck. And that's just a few. Like there's more than that, but let's just use
Hmm.
those. That's a sample size, right? And like there is more than that. So I think that, and going into this season as an example, I would have thought, yep, Carlton definitely pencil them in for a top 4 spot and they really could be looking to charge towards a flag. And I think a lot of people would have agreed with me on that one.
Or at least finals, at least
At
finals.
least finals, right?
I'll give you that.
Um,
I
but
was going into this season. I'm not trying to rebuttal you, but just going into this season, I think everybody was like Brisbane, Collingwood, and then there wasn't really 100% sure on Gold Coast. Carlton was another one. They weren't 100% sure. So I'll stay with you. But for me, it was just, I had it penciled in for finals. top four was still where I wasn't 100% trusting of their list sometimes because they did have a tendency to fall apart. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Look, I think maybe not, okay, so maybe not a flag necessarily, but I think people were really, like, a lot of people were probably expecting them to be around the same mark and
Exactly.
put
Yeah, I
a
agree.
bit of a stronger season together, right? But they just haven't been able to do that. And I think it's all well and good to have the talent, but you need a coach there to actually bring the talent out of them.
Agree.
And a lot of their players have failed to fire this year for one reason or another. And so you have to then look at the coach and think, well, there's a team full of stars here. Why aren't they firing?
Hmm.
So I just, on the flip side, I think if you have a good coach and a bunch of talent, then you're able to make it work. It's a team sport. And I think that, yeah, I just don't think you can have one without the other. I can
Hmm.
understand potentially like why a comment like that would have been made. But I don't think that's, I don't think that Clarko's list at Hawthorn is the only reason why he was able to succeed the way he did.
Hmm.
Um, I think he has to have more than his fair share of credit for being able to do that as well.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answers the question properly, but that's sort of what I
No,
see.
you answered it in your own in your own way. You answered it. Like, may I go kind of how I look at it is I'm kind of I'm kind of 75% on Damien's side a little bit because sometimes when you get just the right amount of footy mind and talent, it can make the team better. Because I have seen coaches, maybe it's just an American sports thing here. There are coaches that can do more with less and be still really good. And then I've seen coaches that they need superstar talent to run the system because their system is so unique. Like, I'm going to do a quick reference here. Some may get it, some may not. Nick Saban is probably one of the best college gridiron coaches ever. But I have made this comparison. I think one of the reasons why he's really one of the best is because he knows he can run really difficult stuff that he can run that professionals run in the college system because he's got so many superstar talents. If you were to put him in a smaller school where he does not have that much talent, he can't do what he does because you need the talent to be able to do that. And I'm almost kind of thinking like it's a little bit of what's the situation with Clarko. I think Clarko has a system that will work, but he needs the right talent in there. And whether North has that talent is the question. I'm not doubting the list management, okay? Because you've got Colby McCurchy, you've got Harry Cecil, you've got Davis Uniacke, you've got Tristan Sheary, you've got Nick Larkey. You've got players that honestly, if you ask most people if they were in different uniforms at different teams, would their performances be different? We don't know. But there is the possibility that if Larkey goes to, say, Collingwood or to Brisbane, and again, I'm not saying this is happening because he just signed a new contract, so happy for him. Would he be better? We don't know that. We could say probably because he'll have better delivery, more delivery, and he's already one of the most accurate goal kicks in the entire competition. The guy puts up six on a team that has not been performing. Imagine him on a Brisbane Lions or a Collingwood where he's going to get 10, 12, 15 deliveries a game compared to the 7 or 8 that he gets with North. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I get that.
So I look at it like this. I think Damien Barrett's a little more on than some. I don't think he's 100%. I don't think Clarko is a bum. I don't think the only reason he won is because of the list. He's got to have some coaching talent to be able to coach. And if you listen to Luke Hodge, Buddy Franklin, Roughhead, when they talk about Clarko, they speak with him of a reverence. And you have to have buy-in to get that type of reverence from your players. So he can coach. I will not deny that. Is because of what he did with the list that he had, does it make it easier to scrutinize when he goes somewhere that maybe doesn't have the talent and it exposes his inability to change that talent? Maybe. And that's how I kind of look at it. I don't think Clark is a bum. Clark is a bum. Never going to say that. The guy has four premiership rings. You just can't say it. Is this list exposing that he maybe doesn't know how to coach players that aren't of the superstar caliber that is the group that he had at Hawthorn? Maybe. I'm not saying completely yes. I'm not saying completely no. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense for sure.
Okay.
I would just say one more thing to round out the
Sure.
conversation. I think it's less about the superstars he had at Hawthorn and it's about the floor. And I think the floor at Hawthorn was a lot higher than the floor is currently at North Melbourne, and that's something we're trying to work through.
I would not disagree. I will not disagree with you on that. I completely agree with you. And I would also even say that the bottom eight of the starting 22, definitely Hawthorn would have huge step up on that. Where you look at it, Florida ceiling for some of those bottom eight of the 22, and then your first two or three that are going to come off that are going to come off into the rotation. There's a gap. It's still not where the depth of list that Hawthorn had. So I will give you that on that one. So we end the Saturday SmackDown slate with an even bigger SmackDown and one that truly stunned me. I know the start of Saturday stunned me with Gold Coast winning, but I have always expected and usually been right that the showdown between Adelaide and Port Adelaide has always been a cracking game of football, one that I enjoy. I specifically made sure I was up to watch this game, and I was a tiny bit disappointed in you, Port. I was very disappointed in you. I will wave my finger like a very disappointed father as Adelaide put this smacketh down in the wet 133-35, a 98-point win. The Crows looked very impressive in the wet. They looked fantastic, and I've said it a few times, and I know Jade is grinning like a Cheshire cat when she hears this. These are my Smoky. Adelaide is my Smoky this year for the Premiership. I know everybody's talking about Brisbane. Everybody's talking about Collingwood. Keep an eye out for this Crows team because if they can get one of those top two spots, which they've got a shot, you don't want to go to Adelaide and play the Crows when they are up and about come finals time. That is going to be a cauldron in Adelaide Oval. The Crows are starting to find their form at the perfect time and getting this smackdown over their rival in the wet and putting up 133 points. That was an impressive performance by the Tricolors.
Absolutely. I wouldn't say that Adelaide's a smoky. I think they've put themselves right in the frame as Collingwood's main contender. If Collingwood is the league leaders, which say on top of the ladder, and I think majority of us probably look at Collingwood. Not sure about the last few weeks, but for most of the season, I think a lot of us have kind of had Collingwood a portion ahead of the rest of the competition. I think
Hmm.
Adelaide's right on their tail now, and I would say that Adelaide are definitely moving themselves into the frame. Um, just such a complete list, and just incredibly dynamic. I think they're awesome, and I think that they are absolutely peaking at the right time. I agree with you. I thought the showdown was very disappointing. We're so used to them being these really entertaining, nail-biting clashes. You would have thought the Port would have put up a little bit more fight, considering it was Ken's last showdown as well.
Hmm.
Um, Kind of makes you question whether giving him, this season to coach out was the right move or not. It's hard to know. I don't know how much Josh Carr's actually controlling things behind the
Hmm.
scenes at Port at the moment, but this just kind of from the outside, it looks like a wasted season for Port. And I'm sure they've got a lot of work to do over the off season as well to kind of get themselves ready to go under a new regime come 2026. But yeah, for the Crows, I think they're firming up as a very, very, very strong contender this season. They look unbelievable, and the additions they've made to their side over the past 24 months have been unmatched. And
Hmm.
I'm not just talking about drafting. Their drafting's been great, but it's the
Yep.
acquisitions from other sides. And obviously the go home factor is very strong there, and they've been able to acquire some great talent through that. But you can only make do with what you've got, and it's a very fortunate position for them to be in, and they've absolutely made the most of it. And
Yep.
full credit to them and Matthew Nix because he's done an incredible job.
Yep, 100%. I said going into the season that Alex Nolan, Isaac Cumming, and James Peatling, all three, they were incredible pickups because they only added depth to this team. That They were good at the top, but they didn't have that middle rung of guys that you know they're going to get it done. And Neil Bullen and Peatling and Cumming have been fantastic for them this year. I'm 100% with you. I've joked with Jade. I'm all aboard the Crows train at this point. I'm super excited to watch this team continue to play. I know that I went back and forth with her for during this game, and I know that she was absolutely soaked, but she was absolutely elated with how well the Crows have done. I'm with you. I will say this. I've said it a couple of times, and I'd be fascinated to hear eventually is how much of this is David Carr taking over and Kenny kind of being the spearhead to kind of take things, but to kind of shield David Carr from the vitriol and the critiques a little bit this the end of this year. And I worry that if Carr is pulling more strings, I've said it a couple of times, it's not a good sign for this poor team because this is the fifth or sixth loss by over 60 points this season. And if Carr is pulling the strings a little bit more than Kenny, that's not a good sign going into next year, knowing that this new coach coming in, really has 460-point losses already on his head a little bit. So I'm fascinated. Again, I I want the whole Kenny thing is annoying to me because the Melbourne media have skewered this guy up and down, and I know the Port Adelaide faithful have never really fully accepted Kenny Hinkley. I've talked to several people. There are sections of the Port Adelaide fans that have never accepted Kenny Hinkley. No, despite all of the success that he's had. I know people say, well, he's never been to a grand final. He's the longest tenured coach that never been to a grand final. Da, da, da. I know that. But the guy was successful. He won games of football at Port Adelaide. Okay. There's no denying that. You look at the record, the guy's won games. It's such a whimpering way to go out in his last season that I'm fascinated. Like I said, I'd be curious to know how much of this is really on Carr more than it's on Kenny Hinkley, because Hinkley's really kind of taking this whole thing in stride. Like I almost kind of feel like he's sitting in the coach's box, but he's not making a lot of the calls. I think Carr has taken over a little bit, which again, that's a little bit of a concerning sign with a drubbing in probably what most fans would say is usually a super competitive, despite the ladder positions, a super competitive showdown, usually every time. So we'll jump to the MCG. The Sunday slate is a little bit more interesting. Thankfully, no 100-point losses in the last two games. We start off Collingwood. I don't know if they ever really got out of second gear against Richmond. Richmond stayed competitive again. This is a scrappy bunch that the entire year has they push teams. They don't win most of the time, but they push teams to play a little bit better. Collingwood get a 36-point win, 93-57. Nick Dacos has 43 and goes bunta in this game. Fantastic for him. The Pies just roll along, but again, I don't really think they got out of third gear.
I don't think so either. Nick Dacos is just an absolute pleasure to watch, and how lucky are we? He's only 22, so we're going to be seeing him for a very, very, very long time. Just a genuine superstar. Yeah, this was sort of just went to script as expected. I think the Tigers put up a brave fight in the sort of first half, and then Collingwood pulled away. I agree with you. I don't think they really left second gear. Got out of second gear for majority of the game. I do think, and I know that had a couple of laid outs. Both sides did, but I think Collingwood potentially is flirting with form a little bit. And I think the last 3 weeks has probably been a little bit of a reality check for them. I
Hmm.
understand they're in a luxurious position to be, well, they were in a luxurious position to be so far ahead they could really manage players and rest them throughout the year. But I think it's time to kind of get themselves together and start getting ready for September. I know that Craig McRae, he's, been there and done that just 2 seasons ago. So I'm not going to tell a premiership winning coach how to win a premiership, because he would certainly know more than I would about that subject. However, if I was in his position, I completely understand and respect his decision and how he's managed the list up until this point throughout the season. But I think it's time to get going now. You've got 4 games left of the season. They haven't put their best footy on the park probably for the better part of a month now. And I think it's sort of time to get going and sort of start to refine that magic before September, because the last thing you want to do is get too ahead of yourself. And I'm not saying that he would do this because I just don't think McRae is that kind of coach, but you wouldn't want to get too ahead of yourself and get too cocky or too arrogant and disrespect those teams coming who are starting to come hard now. I think, appreciate the approach and can respect it. But yeah, it's time to get going.
Yeah. No, I said it a little bit last week. I said I think he's tinkering too much. I understand he wants to get rest into some of these players. I really do, because it has worked for Coach Scott at Geelong a lot, where he's rested players during the year. But he's tinkering at a time when honestly they still haven't hit their toughest section of their fixture yet. That's still to come. I get you want guys cherry, right? But right now, your lead that you had is gone. It is down to 2 points now. So now every game is critical if you want to stay at the MCG all the way through the grand final. I worry he's tinkering too much. I worry it's going to mess with this side psyche a little bit. I know they've been able to do with it, but previous seasons they haven't had this massive lead. We saw it last year with Sydney. They did the same thing. They started having injuries, the team started getting tinkered with, and the form disappeared. So I'd be fascinated to see over these next 4 weeks, how does Coach McRae handle it? Because I know Pendlebury was laid out due to soreness. So maybe that's just one of those where it's conveniently, but man, it's making for a fascinating, fun final 4 weeks because everybody's in with a shout. So I'll be interested. Let's jump to it. Final game of the round, Marvel Stadium. Who would have thought this, Marnie? Who would have thought that we'd be thanking St. Kilda and Melbourne for giving us game of the round as the Saints pull off a stunner as they get the 6 point win, 96-90. But going into the fourth quarter, Marnie, we had a 46-point lead for the Melbourne Demons, and the Saints get the win.
I mean, just yeah, pretty amazing. Like we're sitting here, what, 48 hours after, and it still kind of doesn't feel real.
Hmm.
Just the most defensive, very boring side we've seen for quite some time. That is the Ross Lyon blueprint to pull the rabbit out the hat the way they did. Full kudos to them. I know a fair few of my St Kilda friends are just absolutely lapping this up for everything that it's worth, and good on them, as they should. There hasn't been too much for Saints fans to celebrate this year, so this is definitely one that they'll be remembering and celebrating for quite some time. I know that all the talk for St Kilda this season has been about bringing across Tom de Koning from Carlton and luring him with this huge check. Pay it to Naz. Like you've got to give Naz whatever he
Hmm.
wants. And the jungle drums are still beating very loudly for him to leave and go home to Adelaide at the end of the season. But I'd really hope that St Kilda can find a way to keep him. For someone who supports a small club, who understands the hope that players with, I mean, I don't know if anyone on our list has the potential that Naz has, but I understand like when LDU re-signed and recommitted and turned his back on supposed massive deals. As a North fan, while I never really thought that LDU would leave, um, it was really reassuring and really
Hmm.
reaffirming. Like, hey, he really believes in us and our system and what we're building here, and that's awesome. And for a small club who have often been, the laughing stock of the competition. To have moments like that, I think, as a fan is so important. And for a club as a whole is really important. And so I really hope that St Kilda can follow suit and find a way to keep Naz. They need to, clearly.
Hmm.
But I just think for the soul and for the club as a whole, I think it would be really, really important them to find a way to keep him.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. I'm going to take a different tact with this a little bit because if I'm being 100% honest with myself, I don't understand the TDK move at all. Legitimately. Do not understand it at all because you've already got Rowan Marshall there. Rowan Marshall's a a fantastic ruckman. And honestly, I think he does more with less. Like, yeah, it's very frustrating because I kind of feel like I agree with what some of the commentators if you're St. Kilda, put a blank check in front of Naz and go, write what you want. Seriously, write what you want because honestly, he'll be worth it. Because if the salary cap keeps going up, which it sounds like with revenue and everything like that, the cap is going to go up. You may risk a little bit extra over the top on this, but like what they're talking about paying TDK, it's like 1.6. I'm like, legitimately, that should be Nas's, if not 1.7. What he just did in the final 2 minutes of that game was ridiculous. Like the hanger to tie the game was incredible. And then to have the footy smarts with Rowan Marshall to see when the 666 violation happened, for him to go for you literally, I love it. They showed it on first crack. He's literally telling the forwards, go to the right, go to the right, go to the right. And he looks and says something wrong. And you can tell he goes, I'm going to go left, kick it left. I'll be wide open because everybody will be on the right side. It was brilliant. It was incredibly intelligent footballers. And I love what Rowan Marshall does because he doesn't kick the shit out of it. He puts just enough loft to get it over the defender, hits Nas just inside 50 to where you know he's got the distance to be able to at least get a point out of it. So they're going to win the game no matter what. And for Nas to have the coolness to be able to go back and absolutely slot it dead center was incredible. For me, I tell TDK, go stay at Carlton, keep Rowan Marshall, sign Naz to a big deal, and try to bring in somebody that's actually going to change this game. I just don't understand the TDK signing at all. Unless you're going to move Rowan Marshall and hope you can get draft picks for him, I don't understand the move. You've already got a good ruck there that is still relatively young. He's 29 years old. Ruckman sometimes can play a little bit later into their careers, especially with really good midfielders. So I don't know. I just don't understand it. Nas is incredible. I 100% with you. I want Nas to stay. I know the clamors to go back to Port Adelaide with his mates, the Jason Horn Francis. I just don't see it happening. I think Port Adelaide is still kind of in a fluctuation period. Plus, they still have to sign Butters. And I don't know if they're going to be able to have Butters, Rosie, and Nas and Jason Horn Francis all on their list. I just, honestly, I think Adelaide would be a better fit for Nas if he wants to win a premiership. And I know some Port fans are absolutely they're throwing things at the screen right now for me just saying this. But I agree with what one person said. If Nas wants to win a flag, he goes to Adelaide if he's going to go home. If he wants to get paid, if he wants to play with mates, then he goes to Port or he stays with the Saints. That's his options. Honestly, I think he stays. I think St. Kilda has the cash money to keep him happy. And I think they've got a good enough war chest that if TDK does come, they can afford both. I don't like it, but they can afford both. But they have to move Rowan Marshall if that were to occur. Personally, I pull from TDK. I keep Rowan Marshall and I try to go get another maybe halfback flanker or maybe even a forward. Maybe talk with Carlton about bringing in a Colonel or a Mackay to keep him in Melbourne. Who knows? Just a thought. I don't know. Because with King's knee injury, we don't know if he's going to come back at all what he was. So I think St. Kilda needs to look into trying to find some help because I don't think TDK really changes much. You're actually, personally, it's a downgrade from Rowan Marshall. I think you keep Rowan Marshall, TDK, go stay at Carlton and go get another piece. If you can keep Nods the halfback flanker, either get another halfback flanker so you have two, a lot like what Gold Coast just did with Noble and Rowley, or get that changing midfielder. Try to go after a midfielder that can really make an impact. Because as much as I love McRae, as much as I love Steele, they're all kind of the same. So you need that impact midfielder to go with Nas. And who knows, maybe that jump starts St. Kilda to some greater days, a little bit like those early that 2000, 2009, 2010 period where they were one of the best teams in the competition. Sorry about that. I just don't like the TDK move. Never have. I haven't liked it the entire year. Maybe it's because I love Rowan Marshall. I think he's a fantastic ruckman. I think he's quite downlooked compared to what he actually does impact wise. I think he's a much better forward than TDK is. So personally, so that is it. That is all 9 rounds. I that just that I remember sitting up to see the end of that game and just in stunned shock.
No,
After
it was phenomenal.
the specky when I was like, oh my God, it's tied. Like in the back of my head, I went, there's still 30 seconds. Somebody can still win this. And then the 666 violation, I was like, oh my God, St. Kilda's gonna win this game. Oh my God, it was nuts. So
Incredible.
and then to
Just
hear
incredible.
yeah, and then to hear the calls, I know that I have to give a huge shout out. Triple M, Rebecca Webster got to call the end of that game. Her call was fantastic. I absolutely loved her call. That was incredible. Just it was so awesome to hear her get that to have the pleasure of calling the final kick by Nas was absolutely incredible. So that is it. That is all 9 games. Let's jump to the burning questions. It's going to be an interesting burning questions here, Marnie. We'll jump to it. For the footy fan that you are, and I know again, North Nuffy, did all the blowouts ruin this round of footy?
Um, I mean, no, because I only really focus heavily on North. So personally, yes, because we were just completely destroyed by Geelong. Um, but not really. Like I said, I'm not the right person to ask in that respect, just because I don't really dedicate too much time on a weekend to other games. But like I said, I think there was enough drama and enough cinema in the storylines that followed most of these games. You could find some sort of enjoyment out of it. And then to finish the way that we did was, yeah, I think made up for a lot of people for sure.
It's kind of the recency bias. I think the round is looked at a little bit happier because of how St. Kilda ended it. But I mean,
Yeah.
if you just go if you stop the entire round at the end of Saturday, it was a little ruined because
Yeah.
so many of these derbies, you expect good games. You expect games to be competitive because it's a couple of teams that just don't like each other. And to see utter humiliating blowouts, it ruins it a little bit. It takes a little bit away, especially the showdown, because you're just so used to 4 point classics where somebody kicks one after the siren, or a game that comes down to it that's got a little argy bargy in it. So it was a little ruined, but again, the whole my beer moment for St. Kilda to end it kind of saved the round a little bit for a lot of people. So I'm gonna ask you this. I know again, you say you only keep track of North. Well, let's look at the ladder, Marnie. We got 9 teams now that unfortunately with the Swans loss, they're mathematically eliminated from making finals. There are 9 teams for 8 spots. Who's the one team when the music stops of the musical chairs that will be sitting outside the finals?
So I think it's going to be either Hawthorn or the Bulldogs. I think the other teams, I would say they're probably playing finals. I think it's probably one of those two at this stage. Who, I don't know. Hawthorn has a very difficult run home.
Yep.
And one of my closest friends, he's a mad Hawthorn supporter, and he said that he wouldn't be surprised if the Hawks fell out of the 8 by the time the season ends. But I would say that yeah, I'd say one of those two teams who I don't know, because Hawthorn don't look like the same Hawthorn as last season, and they have a very difficult run home. However, the Bulldogs are so inconsistent, you don't know which side's going to show up.
Hmm.
So yeah, the one thing I will say though is if the Bulldogs made it, I would expect them to have less of an impact on the final series than if Hawthorn made it.
Hmm. No. I've I did the ladder predictor last week, and I had the doggies missing out. I had Hawthorn just barely staying in because I agree with you. Neither the Western Bulldogs nor Hawthorn have an easy run home. In fact, even the Western Bulldogs game this week poses a lot of challenges because they're already a full game behind Gold Coast. Gold Coast still has a game in hand, which you could almost chalk up since it's Essendon. Technically, right now the Bulldogs are 2 games back with 4 games to play. That's a margin. The thing is, all they have to do is be even because their percentage is ridiculous at 132%. So for the Western Bulldogs, you just have to have a little bit of help. You got to try to go 2-2 in these last 2 and hope that somebody drops a few more. I think the Doggies fall out because I think the gap is too big. The percentage really helps them, but you've got GWS this week, and I think GWS is humming. The only thing that worries me a little bit is Jack Buckley sounds like he's out for this game, which having Naughton and Darcy coming in, Taylor's good, but he can't guard two guys. So can GWS's defense huddle together and make up for Jack Buckley's absence, especially with the two-headed monster of Aaron Naughton and Sam Darcy coming to town? Because if the Doggies win that one, then I'm a little more confident the Doggies make the finals. I think the Doggies miss. I worry with them a little bit, but I'm with you. Hawthorn, I'd be a little terrified because their run home is an absolute murderer's row for that. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. So, and I always end with a question for my supporter for their club. And I want you to be really honest. Grab your soapbox, Marnie. Be brutal. What are your honest thoughts on your club right now?
Oh, yeah, look, it's been a it's been a weird season. We had that unbelievable win against the D's in round two, but it was followed by a few pretty disappointing losses. But I think we sort of glossed over them because of what had happened against the D's is sort of something we hadn't seen for a very long time from North.
Hmm.
And then we were kind of brought back down to earth on Good Friday. And then between Good Friday and round 15, when we played Carlton again, we were extremely competitive. We chalked up a few wins. We had that draw against Brisbane in Tassie. We only had one game decided by more than 10 points, I think it was. And that was against Collingwood. And we were with them for majority of that game as well. And then it kind of felt like that Carlton game in round 15, like we spent all our pennies trying to trying to we had a point to prove really that we had come so far since then, and the wheels have pretty much fallen off since that game. Unfortunately, since three-quarter time of that game, we've had halves where we've been competitive, and we've had moments, but haven't really looked anywhere near it. We haven't come within 5 goals of a side since then. So my frustration with North, I think, is, and I expect us to respond against St Kilda on Sunday. I don't think that the loss on Saturday is reflective of where we're at the moment. I also don't think that while the win for St Kilda was amazing, I don't think that's reflective of where they're at the moment either. I think the two sides are probably a lot closer than the results on the weekend suggest. My biggest gripe with North is why, and it's been like this for a very long time, in order for us to bring out these brilliant, ruthless, resilient performances usually comes on the back of a demolition job the week before. And it's usually a response. And we usually use that to push us forward. So that's all well and good. And if we come out and have the game of our life at Marvel on Sunday and beat St Kilda, then fantastic. And I definitely expect us to respond. But I hate that the expectation is reset every 3 months when, we have a bit of a belting. I don't think it helps create a solid foundation for a successful culture. Having said that, I think while the improvement's been small this year, I do think there has been improvement. Our percentage has improved by about 12% from where we were
Hmm.
last year. We're sitting at 4.5 wins with 4 games in hand, and 2 of those are winnable. So a week is a long time in footy, let alone a month. So
Hmm.
anything can still happen. And yeah, if your results go our way and finish the season strong and gives us good momentum going into next season.
Yep, no, 100% with you. It's frustrating because you just want them to be successful, and they keep having moments of lulls, which really stink. I agree with you. I think there's still some positive. There's still some things that are are positives. I know it's tough, and you don't want to because it is a win business. 100% with you on that one. But there are some positives that I honestly you could say you can pull some positives out of this year. Um, I got a real quick another question without notice. I'm sorry, but your thoughts on some of the new additions this year? How have they been successes in your opinion? Like, would you say a Luke Parker is a success? Would you say a a Caleb Daniel is a success. And then I'm totally blanking on the forward that you signed from the West Coast Eagles. I'm totally
Jack Darling.
Jack Darling. Like I know I was asked by Josh from further north to come on and to talk about the impact of Luke Parker. And personally, I think he's been fantastic for your midfield. I think he's played really, really well for you. So just your thoughts on the new signings. Have any of them that have they been positives for you, or is there any negatives that you kind of see with the additions of those three veterans?
Yeah, so I think they've all played different roles. I saw each of them coming in to do different things. I think Parker's been excellent. He's been just that real leader in the midfield that we desperately needed. A real standard setter, especially when it comes to defensive effort. He's probably our strongest defensive pillar in the midfield, considering that George Wardlaw's been in and out of the side all season with injury.
Mhm.
Parks did go out of the side for a couple of games. Oh, it was 1 or 2 games he missed with injury. Hasn't looked the same since he came back in the past sort of 2 to 3 weeks. But when you're carrying a lot of the midfield load for majority of the season, it's bound to take a toll on you. I think that overall he's been great for us. I think Darling has been excellent. I love Jack Darling. Everyone who watches Kanga TV or has heard me talk about North on any platform this year, I've been raving about Jack Darling. The acquisition of him has been so underrated. The way our forward line functions with him in there, it's unrecognizable from what we've had over the past few seasons. He's kicked, I think, 17 or 18 goals for the season, but he's freed Zerha up, he's freed Curtis up, and he's given
Mhm.
Larky some good support. Each of those guys have kicked over 30 goals for the year, and both Curtis and Larky have spent a portion of time on the sidelines. Cam Zerha's only gone 2 games this season goalless. He's kicked at least one goal in every other game this season. And in the 2 games where he was goalless, he was carrying some injury of some sort. So he's been phenomenal. So I think Darling for those guys has been amazing. And I think that's what we needed from him. It was less about what he would do personally in front of goal, but how we'd help the rest around him. And
Mhm.
anything he added, I just saw as a bonus. So he's been unreal. Caleb Daniel's been pretty ordinary. Really struggle to see what he's been able to add to this side at this point in the season. Don't think he's any improvement on Zach Fisher, who was in that role last year. So I'd definitely say he's been the most disappointing of the lot. And I think he's got some work to do over the off season. Otherwise, I wouldn't be playing him, to
Mhm.
be brutally honest.
I worry a few of the Caleb Daniels clangers this year. I think unfortunately I see started to kind of wear on Colby McKercher because I'm starting to see McKercher make some of those mistakes as well. And McKercher's a fantastic kick. Some of these kicks I've seen him do in the last few rounds have been ordinary at best. So I'm with you. I wanted to hear a North because that's in the back of my head. I've been saying I think Darling was fantastic. I thought he was going to be an incredible addition because he was going to take a lot of pressure off the forwards. Like as I said further north when he asked me, he's like, "What are your thoughts on it?" And I told Josh, I said, I thought Darling was going to be an underrated pick because he's going to take a lot of pressure off Larkey, but then also kind of let Zerha and Curtis out a little bit because the second best defender is probably going to go to Darling, which is going to let Zerha get off the chain. Curtis there for a while until he got suspended was they were talking about him being an All Australian. I think he's taken a little bit of a step back a little bit because of that suspension, which kind of stinks because I thought Curtis was playing fantastic football. I think he started to kind of rebound a little bit. Luke Parker is Luke Parker. There is no difference between what I saw with him at Sydney and what I'm seeing with him at North. I watch North just as much as I can because Dylan Stevens, a former Swan, Toby Pink of Farmer Swan, Luke Parker. So there's a little bit of a Swan feel to it, which I love. Always loved Luke Parker. And he was tough as nails, tougher, harder than a cat's head. Love the guy to death. Did not want to see him leave, but I knew he was going to go to a place that was going to appreciate him, and he's done everything that I thought he would do there. I'm with you. Caleb Daniel has been a monumental fail. I worry he may not be with the club next year. We'll have to see because they can't afford to have him back there making some of the mistakes that he's having. So, but just wanted to get your thought on that. So that is it for burning questions. We go to part where I take over the podcast just the littlest bit. We have Team of the Week and Power Rankings. Again, my homage to the startings of the podcast at Fourth and Long. So we'll start on the defense, Marnie. I'm interested to see what you think on this group here. We'll start in the fullback line with James Sicily of the Hawthorn Hawks, Harry Himmelberg of the GWS Giants, and Nick Vlaston of the Richmond Tigers. Across the halfback line, we see Callum Mills of the Sydney Swans, Gold Coast John Noble, and of course, St. Kilda's Nasiah Wanganeen Miller round out the defense. In the ruck, we have Brody Grundy of the Sydney Swans. On the wings, we have Braden Fiorini of the Gold Coast Suns and Sam Docherty of the Carlton Blues. I had to get Doc in there. I might have been a little bit of a stretch, but I'm going to get Doc in there to as a homage. Doc again, wonderful career. Through the guts in the center, we have Hayden Young of the Fremantle Dockers, Jake Saligo of the Adelaide Crows, and Nick Dacos of the Collingwood Magpies round out the center midfield. Along the half forward line, we have Ben Long of the Gold Coast Suns, Jeremy Cameron of the Geelong Cats, and Michael Frederick of the Fremantle Dockers. On the full forward line, we have Sam Darcy of the Western Bulldogs, Shannon Neal of the Geelong Cats, and Aaron Naughton of the Western Bulldogs rounds out the starting lineup. Along the bench, I got a North player in. Colby McKercher is my defender. I wanted to see what you would say on that one. My ruck on the bench is Luke Jackson of the Fremantle Dockers. Marcus Bontempelli is the midfielder through the center. And Jack Higgins of the St. Kilda Saints is my forward. That is team of the round. Your thoughts, Marnie?
Oh, Bailey Smith is very stiff to miss out there.
One goal, one goal. I know 43 disposals, but only one goal. Where Bont had two, Hayden three. I know it's the goal
Yeah, I
thing that
didn't have an
really.
opponent all night. Bailey Smith or
It's
Baslink.
yep. Well, and he only kicked one goal. If he kicks two, he's probably in because of because of that. But it's the multiple goals that got him over. I agree. Baz did have an incredible game, but unfortunately, only the one goal for him there. So 43 disposals. Like I said, it's a good little splitter for me. Is that the goals and scoring involvements kind of help me a little bit, but sometimes does get me roasted in the comments section sometimes by people. But as I say, if you can give me a good argument on why, I'll definitely take it in. So, all right, we'll jump to the power rankings for this week. Again, my homage to the Fourth and Long. We start at 5, the Hawthorn Hawks. At 4, the Fremantle Dockers. At 3, the Adelaide Crows. At 2, the Brisbane Lions. And at 1, still undefeated over the last 5 games, the GWS Giants. I know some people are like, Coach, where's Collingwood? Well, Collingwood did have 2 losses in a row there, so that instantly drags you down a little bit. So that is it for the power rankings. We sit here as I speak. It is a late Tuesday evening in Melbourne. It is a very early, almost 7:30 in the morning my time, but we got a tip. I know we're still early in the week, but we got a tip, a what I think could be a scintillating round 21. All right, Marty, we'll start off Marvel Stadium. This could be a great one. Western Bulldogs, GWS Giants under the lid at Marvel. Who do you like?
The dogs are very convincing at Marvel, I know, but they don't match up well against top eight sides. And the way that the Giants were able to just take full control of a football game in a half, it's hard to go past them. So I'll say the Giants. And I think this is as much of a challenge for them as it is for the dogs. I will say that. But I'd back the Giants in to get the job done.
This is the flipper for me because Jack Buckley going down in that GWS game really changed my tip. If Buckley plays, I tip the Giants. But because Buckley's out, they really only have Sam Taylor. I like Connor. I don't think Iden matches up well against Aaron Naughton. And when it comes to it, Tim English is playing really well. Still no still no Briggs is a lump, and I think English could have fun with him. Sometimes GWS has trouble with good clearance teams. I'm gonna tip the doggies in this one, but this is gonna be a good one. Cannot wait for this one. Thursday night footy. Please, doggies Giants, do not make this a blowout. Please, please, please. Because I want two good Thursday and Friday night footy games to wake up to this week. I hate waking up and then going, it's 5:30, the game is already really over. Good night, and go to sleep. That really annoys me when that happens, and it's happened a couple of times over the last couple of weeks. The Friday night game looks to be just as much. This could be an absolute belter as the Adelaide Oval sees the Crows take on the Hawks. I have the Crows in this one. I agree with you. A tough schedule. I'm still not seeing the Hawks of last year. I don't think Hawkball has fully come back. I love what the Crows are doing. I think they're playing some fantastic football. I'm interested to see will there be a little bit of fatigue late in this game because sometimes wet weather games can really take a lot out of you. Wet boots, wet footy. So can Adelaide get a good enough lead to survive maybe a little late fatigue late in the fourth quarter in this one? Got the Crows, but I think the Hawks are still in it.
Yes, I agree. I think I'll go the Crows as well. It's kind of hard to tip against them at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Hawks were able to snag it.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised at all. So we start off the Saturday slate sees Melbourne host the West Coast Eagles at Marvel Stadium. Um, Melbourne coming off the capitulation that is St. Kilda, West Coast. I feel sorry for you. I have the D's, and I think the D's go big in this one.
Yeah, I think the D's will probably be looking at that and thinking this is the exact, and it's no disrespect to West Coast, but they'll probably be looking at that and thinking this is exactly what we need to rebound from that. Um, is this at the MCG or at Marvel, did you
Marvel,
say?
according to this, it's at Marvel.
The D's are horrible at Marvel, is the only thing.
hmm But
Um,
it's the West Coast.
I
I'm not
know,
again West Coast fans. I'm sorry, but let's
I
just be honest.
know,
If this
and
was at
I,
Optus State, I'll say this. If this was at Optus Stadium, I would probably tip West Coast because
yeah.
you have the absolute gut wrench that is the end of that. Then you have to go to Perth. I probably might tip West Coast in this, but the fact that West Coast has got to come across country after getting smashed by Fremantle, Melbourne still at home, playing under the lid at Marvel. I think you're going to get some angry D's, and I think West Coast is literally they're going to run into a very angry buzzsaw that is the Melbourne Demons. I agree with you. The D's don't, for some weird reason, they just don't like Marvel Stadium. But I think this is one of those. I don't think the venue matters because it's in Victoria.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's hard to tip West Coast ever.
Yep,
Which is
that
the
too.
only reason that's the only reason why I'm tipping Melbourne. Logically, you think that the Eagles could snag another win or two before the season's out.
hmm
But just given the way their season's panned out, it's hard to tip them.
Yep. No.
That's the only reason why I'm tipping Melbourne.
Yep.
But there's nothing inspiring about Melbourne at the moment.
Yeah. Zero confidence, right?
No, that's a no confidence vote, especially at Marvel. If West Coast win this, I won't be surprised.
Yep, I'm 100% with you. West Coast has pulled some weird ones out of the hat, so it wouldn't shock me a bit, especially say coming off the St. Kilda loss for the D's. But again, it's the full travel across country. Again, an angry D's team. I think this is a recipe for disaster, even despite the Marvel Stadium woes that the D's have. So up to People First Stadium, Richmond Tigers. I feel sorry for you as you get a Gold Coast teams that is absolutely humming. I got the Gold Coast in this one. Again, Richmond will be competitive. They'll be scrappy, but just too much talent on the other side. Suns for me.
Yeah, Suns at home. Don't miss.
Yep. So go up to the SCG as the Sydney Swans come home to face the Essendon Bombers. Kind of a perfect little game for the Swans here. I think they start some youngsters. I think they blood some kids, and I still think they get a win. I think there's just enough superstar talent on the park that even if they blood a Jesse Totoli in the half forward line, will you see a Patrick Snell maybe come in on defense? So I think the Swans win this one. Essendon will be competitive for a couple of quarters, maybe three, but I think the Swans too much class.
Yeah, I reckon this is a danger game for the Swans, not gonna lie. But again, it's with the way it's the same with West Coast. I wouldn't compare them per se, but the way that Essendon have been traveling at the moment, it's hard to tip them, isn't it?
Definitely, definitely. Here we go. Could be game of the round, which is interesting because we've got two really good ones to start. But the Saturday night main event sees Collingwood at the MCG versus Brisbane Lions, a rematch of the 2023 grand final. Who do you like? Collingwood, Brisbane?
I reckon Brisbane. I don't know why. I just reckon they are gonna feel like they've got to win this game.
This is a tough one for me because MCG Collingwood, they're gonna have the fans behind them, and they always, whenever they have the crowd behind them, they always find a way to win games they're probably not supposed to. You you're gonna get a lift from Brisbane after the atrocious performance against Gold Coast. Collingwood coming off a less than impressive game against Richmond. Will Pendlebury be back off his general soreness? We'll have to see. Will there be any changes? I'm gonna tip the Pies in this one only because where it's at. I think if this is in Brisbane, I tip Brisbane. But because it's at the MCG and the Pies play the MCG really well, I'm going to tip the Pies in this one, but it is razor sharp margins because when Brisbane are on, there is very few teams that can stop them. There are just so many weapons on this team, especially they'll get Zach Bailey back for this game, which is fantastic. Knowing that the weapons that Collingwood has, this is going to be a ripper on Saturday night. Cannot wait for that one. Marvel Stadium, St. Kilda, your beloved North Melbourne Kangaroos. Can the Roos pull off the upset off a St. Kilda team that really got high off of that win over Melbourne?
Yes, I'm tipping North. I think we'll respond. Like I said, I don't think the margin between North and St Kilda is as big as what the weekend's results respectively would have suggested. Um, I don't know if that's delusional or not, but I definitely think North will respond, and I think we can win this one. So
It's
I'll be
it
tipping North.
it's not delusion. It is. I will caveat my tip. Okay, I have St. Kilda, but here's my caveat. I think the first quarter is going to be paramount for North. If North can jump the St. Kilda team, get a 2, 3, 4 goal lead early, and put a little bit of fear into St. Kilda, I think they've got a really good shot. North cannot go down early and cannot go down by more than 3 goals if they want to win this game because this is a North team. They've been battered, they've been beaten, they've been humiliated. They cannot afford to get down to a St. Kilda team that honestly, did they celebrate this Melbourne win too much? And that is my worry. When Ross Lyon is being filmed with Nas on his shoulders dancing around in a hotel, I get it. It's a huge win. It's a fantastic win. But did they go too hard? And that is my tiny worry. I will caveat tipping Saints, but North have to jump this St. Kilda team early. The other thing I don't like is no Tristan Zeri is not back, correct?
Correct, but
Okay.
Larkey and Wardlaw are both a big chance to return.
Good. And that really helps. It's the ruck competition. I would be so much more comfortable tipping North if Tristan was playing. The fact Tristan's not playing really with the Rowan Marshall that I think is starting to kind of find some form right now. Like I said, I'll tip St. Kilda, but like I said, caveat. I think if North can jump St. Kilda early, it could be on. It could be on for sure. So jump to a fun one. GMHBA Stadium, the Alphabet Stadium, as the Geelong Cats take on Port Adelaide down at the Cattery. Cats and Cats big. Again, I'm uninspired by Port going through the rest of the season.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be much fun for Port. One thing I will say about Port Adelaide is this is the sort of game they would fire up for. Now, I think Geelong's too good, so I think Geelong will get the win, but I don't think it'll be a blowout.
Mhm.
Um, I think I think Port, sorry, perform their best when there's no pressure on them. So a great example of that was back in Gather Round earlier this year. Hawthorn just so hot to start the season. I don't think many people gave Port a chance. They came out and absolutely steamrolled them. Um, so games like that where there's not a lot of expectation on Port, I feel like that's when they lift. Like maybe there was a lot of expectation for this showdown to be, a massive spectacle like it always is. And it just completely, they just couldn't handle the pressure. So while I think Geelong will win, I don't think it'll be a massive win, like maybe 4 or 5 goals, maybe even less. Because I think this is the sort of game that Port would get up for
Mhm.
because no one would give them a chance. That's kind of the Port psyche, I think I've
I,
come to
I
learn.
I really hope you're right, Marnie. I really do. I'm having a hard time seeing that lift with when Kenny Hinkley is joking around with so few games left. I'm just not in. I would loved it. I really, really do. I don't see it. I just don't see it. This Port team look absolutely defeated right now, and that's a bad sign going down against a Cats team that I think are absolutely, pardon my pun here, purring. So let's jump out Optus Stadium, Fremantle Dockers, Carlton Blues. I mean, I'll ask, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer. Who do you like, Dockers, Blues?
Frio.
Frio for me too. I think that they are humming. They're playing some fantastic football. Cannot wait to see this. So that is it. That is all 9 games tipped. Miss Marnie, as per usual, it is always fantastic to sit down and chat footy with you. One of my favorite things to do. You have a great footy mind. I love how you see things. Again, your passion for North Melbourne again is so awesome. Again, as somebody that is a passionate fan of my clubs, my teams up here in the States, I respect and love people that no matter what happens with their club, they stay with them. So I want to wish you the best with Kanga TV. Again, for those that have not listened, tell us just a little bit about Kanga TV, where to get a hold of it, and what to expect coming in the future.
Yeah, Kanga TV, home of North Melbourne fans, pretty self-explanatory. North Melbourne fan channel, previews, reviews, all that good stuff. I really love the human side of footy and the stories to tell. So that's definitely my point of difference. I try and connect with some interesting North Melbourne people and, give them a way to share their story and hopefully allow people to connect with the club. There'll definitely be some coverage of the AFLW season as we roll into that, all the off-season stuff, all the awards, pulling apart some of my pre-season predictions, which some of them were pretty bad, but there are some real good ones in there. So I'm excited to revisit a few of those. And yeah, just sort of covering bits and pieces with North. I think it's only my first season doing it. I've been doing North content for a while, but it's my first year back out on my own after quite some time. And so I'm just trialing new things all the time and trying to figure out something that works. And it seems to be working so far. So yeah.
No, it's been fantastic. I keep track of it. I know you and Josh are two of my favorite North people to talk to. The Further North podcast, he's had me on there to chat. I know it was really funny when he had me on to preview the Swans and the utter fear between both of us because I was worried North could nip the Swans because the Swans hadn't been playing well, and his fear the Swans would blow us out. So it's a lot of fun. I love interacting with you two. I love your passion for the North Melbourne Footy Club again. They're kind of my second team, as I've said. It came down to between North and Sydney when I chose my club for AFL. I'm sorry, and that I went Sydney on that one. But again, I have an affinity for the North Melbourne Footy Club. I love the way you guys go about it. The fan base is die hard. I absolutely love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. Again, if you like what you're listening to, please like and subscribe and keep track. We will have more footy coverage, including the Sandful W final review and Sandful snapshot coming up very soon as we talk about the first flag that has been handed out in footy this particular year. So that'll do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals, and we'll be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.